Imagine standing at the entrance of a dark forest, terrified, lost, unable to remember how you got there, and the path behind you has vanished completely. You look ahead and see nothing but shadows, twisted trees, and the faint echo of screams in the distance. This isn't a nightmare you'll wake up from. This is your life, and every step you take deeper into that forest is a step you chose, whether you realize it or not. This is the exact moment where Dante Alighieri begins his journey in the Divine Comedy, and what he discovers in the depths of hell isn't just a collection of sinners being punished. It's a mirror reflecting back the undeniable truth that every soul down there built their own prison, brick by brick, choice by choice, until there was no way out. You are the architect of your own hell, and Dante's masterpiece proves it in ways that will shake you to your core. The Divine Comedy isn't just medieval poetry or religious allegory. It's a psychological blueprint of how human beings destroy themselves from the inside out. Written in the early 14th century, Dante crafted a vision of the afterlife so vivid, so precise, so brutally honest that 700 years later, we're still grappling with its implications. He didn't write about hell as some external punishment handed down by an angry god. He wrote about hell as the inevitable destination of our own choices, the natural conclusion of lives lived without wisdom, without restraint, without love. Let's start with the structure itself, because Dante was methodical, almost scientific, in how he organized damnation. Hell in the Divine Comedy is shaped like a massive, inverted cone buried deep beneath the earth's surface, divided into 9 circles, each one representing a different category of sin. And as you descend deeper, the sins become more severe, the punishments more horrific, the suffering more eternal. But here's what most people miss. The structure isn't arbitrary. It's a reflection of moral philosophy, a hierarchy of human failure. The higher circles, the ones closer to the surface, contain sins of incontinence, lust, gluttony, greed, wrath. These are failures of self-control, weaknesses of the flesh and emotion. The middle circles hold sins of violence against others, against yourself, against God and nature. And the lowest circles, frozen in ice at the very bottom, contain sins of fraud and treachery, the deliberate corruption of human reason and trust, the betrayal of love and loyalty. This isn't random. This is Dante showing us that the worst hell isn't for those who couldn't control their passions. It's for those who weaponized their intelligence, who used their greatest gifts to harm, deceive, and destroy. The architecture of hell is the architecture of moral degradation, and every soul finds their place not because God put them there, but because their choices carved out that exact spot for them. When Dante enters the first circle, limbo, he encounters virtuous pagans and unbaptized infants, souls who committed no sin but lack the grace of Christian salvation. Their punishment isn't torment, it's absence. They exist in a place without hope, without suffering, but also without joy, suspended in eternal neutrality. Even here, in the mildest part of hell, Dante shows us that damnation isn't always about what you did wrong. Sometimes it's about what you never had the chance to do right. But the deeper message is this: even the absence of choice has consequences. Even inaction shapes your eternity. Move down to the second circle, and you meet the lustful, souls who surrendered completely to carnal desire, who put physical passion above reason, above commitment, above everything else. Their punishment is to be eternally swept up in a violent storm, whipped around in darkness, never touching ground, never finding rest, forever carried by the same winds that carried them through life. Dante meets famous lovers here, including the tragic Francesca da Rimini, who tells him her story, how she and her lover were killed by her husband after being discovered together, and even in hell, she clings to her lover, still swept up in the same passion that destroyed them both. The punishment fits perfectly because these souls chose to be ruled by tempestuous emotion in life. So in death, they're literally ruled by tempest forever. But here's the critical insight. Francesca blames a book, blames love, blames everything except her own choices. And that's the pattern Dante reveals over and over. The damned always have justifications, always have excuses, always see themselves as victims of circumstance, rather than architects of their fate. They built their hell by refusing to see what they were building. In the third circle, you find the gluttons, souls who worshipped food and drink and physical pleasure above all else, wallowing in mud under freezing rain, guarded by Cerberus, the three-headed beast who tears at them endlessly. They spent their lives consuming without thought, reducing existence to appetite, and now they lie in filth, being consumed by a monster, eternally degraded, eternally reduced to the level they chose for themselves. Dante shows us that when you make pleasure your god, you become something less than human, something that can only wallow and suffer. The fourth circle holds the hoarders and the wasters, those who either clutched their wealth too tightly or threw it away too carelessly, and their punishment is to push enormous weights against each other in eternal opposition, screaming accusations, forever locked in conflict. These souls made material wealth the center of their existence, either obsessing over accumulation or destruction, and now they're trapped in meaningless labor, pushing rocks that go nowhere, achieving nothing, forever. The architecture here is beautiful in its horror. Dante shows that whether you worship money by hoarding it or by wasting it, you're still worshiping money. You're still building a prison of materialism around yourself. Then comes the fifth circle, where the wrathful and the sullen reside in the muddy river Styx, the wrathful fighting each other on the surface, tearing at each other's flesh in endless combat, while the sullen lie beneath the water, gurgling a hymn they can never complete because they're drowning in the same emotional swamp they created in life. The wrathful express their anger outward, and now express it forever. The sullen swallowed their anger inward, and now drown in it forever. Two sides of the same destructive coin, two ways of building the same hell. At this point, Dante and his guide Virgil reach the walls of the city of Dis, the fortified boundary between upper hell and lower hell, between sins of incontinence and sins of malice, and the demons try to prevent them from entering, because what lies beyond is worse: deliberate evil, calculated harm, the conscious choice to destroy. Once inside the sixth circle, you encounter the heretics, those who denied the immortality of the soul or spread false doctrine, trapped in burning tombs, locked in fire forever, because they tried to lock others out of truth. Their punishment is isolation within their own false beliefs, eternally burning in the philosophical prisons they constructed. But it's when you descend into the seventh circle that hell becomes truly horrific, because this is where violence lives. divided into 3 rings. The outer ring holds those who were violent against others, murderers and warmongers, boiled forever in a river of blood, submerged to different depths, depending on the severity of their crimes. The middle ring contains those who were violent against themselves, suicides who are transformed into gnarled trees, trapped in wood, torn at by harpies, denied even the form of a human body because they rejected their own existence. When a branch breaks, it bleeds and speaks, and Dante is horrified. But the message is clear. When you destroy yourself, you lose even the dignity of self. You become something twisted and unrecognizable, trapped in the very act of self-destruction forever. The inner ring of the 7th circle holds those who were violent against God, nature and art, blasphemers, sodomites, and usurers, burning on desert sands under a rain of fire, paying eternally for their rebellion against divine order. Dante's construction here is fascinating because he links violence against God with violence against nature and economic injustice, showing that all these sins share the same root, a fundamental disrespect for the natural order, a decision to twist what should be sacred into something profane. Now you descend into the 8th circle, called Malebolge, the evil ditches, and this is where Dante's genius truly shines, because Malebolge contains 10 separate ditches, each one holding a different category of fraud. And fraud is worse than violence, because it requires intelligence. It requires the corruption of humanity's highest faculty, reason itself. The first ditch holds panderers and seducers, whipped by demons as they march in eternal circles, driven like cattle because they drove others through manipulation. The second holds flatterers, submerged in excrement, drowning in the same filth they produced with their tongues. The third contains the simonists, corrupt religious officials, sold spiritual offices, and they're planted upside down in holes with their feet on fire, inverted because they inverted the sacred. In the fourth ditch, you find the sorcerers and false prophets with their heads twisted backward so they can only see behind them, never ahead, because they tried to see the future through forbidden means, and now they cannot see where they're going at all, forever stumbling blind into eternity. The fifth ditch holds corrupt politicians submerged in boiling tar, guarded by demons with hooks who pull them under when they surface, a perfect reflection of the dark dealings and hidden corruption they practiced in life. The sixth contains the hypocrites wearing heavy, gilded robes lined with lead, appearing beautiful on the outside, but crushing them under invisible weight, exactly as their false righteousness crushed them in life. The seventh ditch is filled with thieves, transformed into reptiles and burning in serpent-infested chaos, constantly losing their human form because they stole the property of others and now lose their own identity forever. In the eighth ditch, you meet the evil counselors, souls who gave fraudulent advice, each one trapped inside an individual flame, isolated in the fire of their own deceitful tongues, unable to speak clearly, unable to communicate, burning alone because they used communication as a weapon. The ninth ditch holds the sowers of discord, religious schismatics, and political divisive figures, and they are mutilated by a demon with a sword, cut apart, and forced to walk a circle where their wounds heal, only to be cut again when they complete the circuit, torn apart forever because they tore communities apart in life. The 10th and final ditch of Malebolge contains the falsifiers, divided into 4 types: alchemists, impersonators, counterfeiters, and liars, each suffering from different diseases: itching, madness, dropsy, fever, rotting in their own corruption because they corrupted truth itself. They made reality false, and now they're trapped in the ultimate falseness, bodies that betray them, minds that can't trust themselves, existence that is fundamentally unreliable. Every punishment in Malabulge is poetically just. Contrapasso, Dante calls it. The idea that punishment should mirror the sin in nature, but be opposite in direction. And this isn't just clever poetry. This is Dante showing us that hell is self-created. These souls are experiencing the natural consequence of their own choices projected into eternity. They're not being punished by some external force. They're living out the logical conclusion of who they chose to be. At the very bottom of the 8th circle, at the edge of the pit leading to the 9th circle, you encounter the giants, enormous figures from mythology and biblical history, titans who rebelled against the divine order, and they serve as the transition between fraud and the ultimate sin, treachery, because their rebellion was the original betrayal, the first breaking of sacred trust. One of these giants, Antaeus, lowers Dante and Virgil down into the final circle, the frozen lake of Cocytus, and here everything changes, because now there's no fire, no storm, no blood, just ice, cold, eternal frozen stillness. The 9th circle is divided into 4 rounds, each one holding a different type of traitor frozen in the ice of Cocytus. The first round, Cana, named after Cain, who killed his brother, holds traitors to family, frozen in ice up to their necks, unable to bow their heads because they dishonored the most fundamental bond. The second round, Antenora holds traitors to country and political party, frozen at the same level, but with their faces exposed to the icy wind, paying for their political betrayal with eternal cold exposure. The third round, Ptolemaea, named after Ptolemy, who murdered guests at a banquet, holds traitors to guests and hosts, those who violated sacred hospitality, and they're frozen on their backs with only their faces above the ice, and their tears freeze instantly, forming crystal visors over their eyes so they cannot even weep, cannot even release their suffering, because they froze the hearts of those who trusted them. But the fourth and final round is the worst. Judeca, named after Judas Iscariot, holds traitors to benefactors and lords, those who betrayed love itself, and they are completely submerged in ice, frozen in various twisted positions, sealed away from all warmth, all light, all connection forever. And at the very center, at the absolute lowest point of hell, frozen in the ice up to his chest, is Satan himself, Lucifer, Dis, the ultimate traitor, the angel who betrayed God, and he has 3 faces, a mockery of the Holy Trinity, and in each mouth he chews on a traitor. Judas, who betrayed Christ, Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Caesar, and his 6 wings beat constantly, creating the wind that freezes the entire 9th circle, trying to fly, but trapped. His own attempts at escape, creating his prison, the perfect architect of his own hell. This is the culmination of Dante's vision. Evil at its core isn't hot, isn't passionate, isn't alive. It's cold, it's dead, it's the absence of love, the negation of connection, the willful choice to break the bonds that make us human, and the punishment for this ultimate sin is to be frozen forever in the moment of that choice, trapped in the act of betrayal for all eternity, completely alone, despite being surrounded by other souls. Because when you destroy trust, you destroy the possibility of relationship, and without relationship, there is only isolation and isolation taken to its ultimate conclusion is this: ice, silence, darkness, and the endless mastication of your own betrayal, reflected in the betrayals of those frozen around you. Throughout the entire journey, Dante shows us that these souls aren't victims, they're architects. Every punishment is a reflection of choices made freely, sins committed knowingly, opportunities for redemption rejected consciously. The lustful chose passion over wisdom. The gluttons chose appetite over restraint. The wrathful chose violence over peace. The fraudulent chose deception over truth. The treacherous chose betrayal over love. And now they experience forever what they chose to become, not as arbitrary punishment, but as the natural, inevitable consequence of who they decided to be. The geography of hell isn't random. It's a map of human moral failure, a diagram of how we build our own damnation, and Dante walks through it, not as a distant observer, but as someone who recognizes himself in these sins, who understands that the difference between him and the damned is not nature, but choice, not capacity, but decision, not possibility, but action. He could have been any of them. He had the capacity for every sin he witnesses, but he chose differently. And that choice makes all the difference when Dante finally leaves hell, climbing down Satan's body and emerging on the other side of the earth. At the base of Mount Purgatory, he looks up and sees the stars again. And that image of the stars after the journey through hell is crucial, because stars represent hope, guidance, divine order, everything that was absent in the pit, and the fact that he can see them again means escape is possible. Redemption is available, but only after confronting the reality of what we're capable of, only after understanding how we build our own hells, only after recognizing that every choice matters. Every action has eternal weight. Every decision is a brick in the architecture of who we become. The Divine Comedy isn't a threat. It's a warning and an invitation. Dante shows us the worst we can become, not to terrify us, but to wake us up, to make us see that hell isn't waiting for us somewhere in the afterlife. We're building it right now, with every lie we tell, every relationship we betray, every moment we choose hatred over love, cruelty over kindness, self-interest over sacrifice. We're all architects, whether we realize it or not. The question is, what are we building? A prison of ice and suffering and isolation, or something else, something better, something that points toward the stars? Your life is the construction site. Your choices are the materials. Your habits are the tools. And every day you're building something. The architecture of your soul is taking shape right now in this moment. And Dante's masterpiece holds up a mirror and asks you to look honestly at what you're creating. Are you building toward connection or isolation? Toward truth or deception? Toward love or betrayal? Because the difference between heaven and hell isn't some cosmic lottery. It isn't about who was born in the right place, or believed the right things, or got lucky with grace. It's about who you chose to become when you had the freedom to choose. It's about what you built when you held the tools. Dante Alighieri spent years crafting his vision of the afterlife, writing in Italian rather than Latin, so common people could read it, creating characters so vivid they still haunt us centuries later, describing punishments so fitting they've become the template for how we imagine divine justice. But the real genius of the Divine Comedy isn't in its creativity or its poetry or even its theology. The real genius is in its psychology, in the way it reveals that we are always creating ourselves, always building our reality, always architecting our eternity, and the hell we fear isn't something imposed from outside. It's something we carry inside and project outward until it becomes the world we inhabit. You are the architect of your own hell, not someday, not after death, not in some theoretical future, but now, today, in every choice you make, in every word you speak, in every relationship you nurture or betray, in every moment you choose who to become. And Dante's masterpiece proves it by showing us thousands of souls who made their choices and then had to live with the consequences forever, frozen in the eternal now of their own creation, trapped in the architecture they built, unable to escape because the prison was always internal, the hell was always self-created, the damnation was always chosen. So what are you building? What choices are you making right now that will define who you become? What sins are you nurturing that might grow into the forest that traps you? What betrayals are you contemplating that might freeze you in the ice of your own heart? These aren't abstract questions. They're the most practical questions you can ask, because your eternity starts now, not after death, but in the daily construction of your soul, in the moment-by-moment decisions that make you who you are. Dante walked through hell and came out the other side, looked up and saw the stars again, began his ascent toward purgatory and eventually paradise. But he could only do that because he confronted honestly what he was capable of, what humans are capable of, the depths to which we can sink and the heights to which we can rise. And both possibilities exist in every moment, in every choice, in every decision to build towards something better or to dig deeper into our own damnation. The journey through the inferno isn't meant to end in despair. It's meant to end in recognition, in the sobering understanding that you have power, terrible, awesome, eternal power, the power to create yourself, to build your reality, to architect your existence. And with that power comes responsibility, the responsibility to choose wisely, to build carefully, to create something that points toward the stars rather than toward the frozen darkness at the center of the earth, where Satan beats his wings and accomplishes nothing except the creation of his own prison. You are the architect. This is your construction site. These are your materials. This is your one life, your one chance to build something worthy of the gift of existence. And every moment you waste in petty sins and small betrayals and lazy choices is a moment spent digging your pit deeper, building your walls higher, freezing your heart colder. And Dante's masterpiece proves this not through argument, but through vision, not through philosophy, but through poetry, not through threat, but through truth, the simple, undeniable truth that we become what we choose. We create what we practice, we build what we are, and hell isn't waiting for us in some distant future. It's being constructed right now by souls who refuse to see what they're building until it's too late, until they're frozen in the ice of their own creation, chewing on their own betrayals, trapped in the architecture of their own choices forever. The Divine Comedy ends with paradise, with the vision of God as perfect love that moves the sun and other stars. But you can't get there without first going through hell, without first confronting the reality of human evil and your own capacity for damnation, without first understanding that you're always building something, and the question isn't whether you'll create an eternity, but what kind of eternity you'll create. And that's the gift Dante gives us. Not comfort, but clarity. Not easy answers, but honest questions. Not the promise that everything will be fine, but the warning that everything matters. Every choice, every action, every moment of your life is a brick in the structure you're building. So build carefully, choose wisely, because you are the architect of your own hell. And that means you're also the architect of your own redemption. And the choice between the two is always, always yours.